The bus runs 4 times a day instead of 12. Half the restaurants are shut. That is the same charming European town you visited in July, in the 3rd week of January. So here are 7 European towns where a retiree can genuinely live without a car all year, and the 2 famous ones I had to cut, for reasons worth hearing. The test is not whether they are lovely, because they all are. It is groceries carried home uphill, a hospital reachable by bus, and a residency route an American can actually get. Number 1. Braga, Portugal. Braga is my top pick and it is the most complete answer here. It is a real city of substantial size rather than a village, which means it has genuine infrastructure, hospitals including a large public hospital and private options, a university, a full range of shops, and services that operate all year because they serve residents rather than visitors. The center is compact and walkable, with a large pedestrianized core. Critically, Braga is much flatter than Porto, which is the comparison that matters. You are not fighting a hillside to get home with groceries. Transport works. Braga has urban buses, and frequent rail connections to Porto, which puts you within reach of a major international airport with direct routes to North America. That combination, a quiet affordable town with a big airport an hour away, is exactly what you want and it is rarer than you would think. Cost is the other reason Braga wins. Annual lease rents are a fraction of Lisbon or Porto, and Portugal generally remains inexpensive for food and services. Residency is the most accessible in Western Europe. The D7 requires about €920 a month in passive income as of January 2026. The drawbacks. Northern Portuguese winters are damp and colder than the Mediterranean image suggests, and Portuguese buildings are poorly insulated, so heating is a genuine cost and a genuine discomfort. Braga is also a conservative, traditional city, and the English-speaking community is much thinner than on the Algarve. You will need Portuguese, and you will need to build a social life rather than joining one. Before the rest, 2 things you need straight. Here is what a town has to make this list. A real supermarket within a flat 10-minute walk, not just a small shop. A pharmacy nearby. A health center for ordinary care, and a genuine hospital reachable within a reasonable time by public transport. Regional transport that runs year-round, not seasonally, and that connects to an airport you can actually use to get home. Terrain you can manage, meaning slopes, steps, and paving surfaces assessed honestly. Winter that is survivable and summer that is not dangerous. Annual lease rents that a modest pension covers, not holiday rental prices. And a residency route an American can realistically obtain. That last requirement quietly eliminates a lot of Europe, and I will come back to it, because it removed 2 of the towns I most wanted to include. Number 2. Coimbra, Portugal. Coimbra is Braga's sibling in this comparison and it comes second for one specific reason. Everything good about Braga largely applies: a real city, a major university, an excellent university hospital that is one of the most important medical centers in the country, rail on the main north-south line, affordable annual rents, and the same accessible D7 route. The reason it ranks below Braga is topography. Coimbra's historic center climbs a genuinely steep hill, and the university sits at the top of it. The lower town along the Mondego River is flat and that is where you would want to live, but a lot of the housing people fall in love with is up that hill. Choose your neighborhood with real care here, and if you are viewing apartments, walk the route home from the supermarket before you sign anything. Number 3. Ljubljana, Slovenia. Ljubljana is the best designed city on this list for someone who cannot or will not drive. The center is closed to cars in a serious, permanent way, and the city runs free electric shuttles through the pedestrian zone specifically so that pedestrianization does not exclude people with limited mobility. That is a deliberate design decision about older residents, and it tells you what kind of place this is. The center is flat along the Ljubljana River, compact, extremely safe, and clean. Healthcare is good, with a major medical center in the city. Slovenia is in the European Union and Schengen, so travel is easy, and Ljubljana has an airport with European connections feeding into major hubs. The drawbacks are real and I would weigh them carefully. Winters are cold, long and gray, and Ljubljana sits in a basin that traps fog for extended periods, which some people find genuinely difficult. Slovenia is not cheap. It is far cheaper than neighboring Austria and Italy but well above Portugal or Greece. The residency route for a non-European Union retiree is more bureaucratic and less well-trodden than Portugal's, and you should get local legal advice early. And the English-speaking retiree community is very small, so you would be integrating into Slovenian life rather than joining a foreign enclave. Number 4. Thessaloniki, Greece. I have included one larger city here because for some people the answer to a quiet town is that it is too quiet. Thessaloniki is Greece's second city, a real year-round urban center with a substantial student population, which means it has energy in February and not just in August. It has a long flat seafront promenade that is one of the great walking spaces in Europe, and a metro that finally opened after one of the longest construction sagas on the continent, which materially improved the car-free proposition. Rents are low by Western European standards, food is excellent and cheap, and the city has hospitals and an international airport. The drawbacks. Greek summers have become genuinely extreme, and Thessaloniki gets very hot, which restricts walking for a chunk of the year and makes air conditioning necessary against expensive Greek electricity. Public healthcare was badly damaged by a decade of austerity and has not fully recovered, so budget for private care. And the residency route is the problem. Greece's financially independent person visa requires about €3,500 a month, roughly $4,050, after being raised from €2,000. That is the highest bar in this video by a wide margin, and it excludes most retirees living on a pension. Thessaloniki is cheap to live in and expensive to be admitted to. Number 5. Oviedo, Spain. Oviedo is the one people have usually not considered, and it deserves more attention. It is the capital of Asturias in northern Spain, a mid-sized city with a compact, largely pedestrianized, notably flat historic center. It is clean, orderly and safe, with a strong regional hospital and Spain's excellent public health system behind it. The climate is the thing to understand. Northern Spain is green because it rains, and Asturias is genuinely wet. But that also means Oviedo does not suffer the brutal summer heat of Valencia, Seville or Alicante, and increasingly that is an advantage rather than a drawback. If you want to be able to walk outside in July, the north of Spain is where Spain still lets you do that. Rents are far below Madrid, Barcelona, or Valencia. Spanish rail connects Oviedo to the rest of the country, and there is a regional airport, with Bilbao and Madrid reachable for long haul. The drawbacks. The rain is persistent and not everyone tolerates it. English is not widely spoken, so the language commitment is real. And Spain's non-lucrative visa threshold of €2,400 a month, about $2,780, is the second highest here and rules out many pensions, although Spain does accept equivalent savings as an alternative. Number 6. Trieste, Italy. Trieste is an unusual, slightly melancholy, extremely civilized city on the Adriatic at the very edge of Italy, and it has a specific quality that belongs in this video. It has one of the oldest populations in Italy, in one of the oldest countries in Europe, and the city is built accordingly. The seafront is flat and the central grid is walkable. There is an extensive urban bus network, historic trams and trains, good hospitals, and superb cafes that function as genuine social infrastructure rather than as tourist props. Rents are notably low for Italy, far below Milan, Florence or Rome, partly because Trieste is geographically isolated at the end of a corridor. The drawbacks. Trieste climbs sharply behind the waterfront, so again the neighborhood decision is the real decision. The Bora, the cold northeasterly wind, is genuinely severe and can make winter walking unpleasant or unsafe on the worst days. And Italy's elective residency visa is the difficulty. It requires substantial passive income, commonly cited around €31,000 a year for a single applicant, and Italian consular practice is known for being demanding and for applying discretion strictly. The visa also does not permit work. Number 7. Kalamata, Greece. Kalamata is the smallest and most purely lifestyle-driven choice here, and I have included it with explicit caveats. It is a coastal city in the Peloponnese with a flat seafront, a genuinely pleasant historic center, a hospital, a regional airport with seasonal international connections, low rents, superb food, and a climate that is mild in winter and hot in summer. Here are the caveats, and they are the reason it ranks last. Kalamata is a driving city for anything beyond the center, and Greek intercity rail is limited and has had well-publicized reliability and safety problems. Healthcare depth outside Athens and Thessaloniki is thin, and serious cases mean traveling. Summer heat is severe and increasingly so. And the same €3,500 a month residency threshold applies as in Thessaloniki. Kalamata is the most beautiful daily life on this list and the least practical infrastructure. That is an honest trade and some people will happily make it. Before the towns I cut, let me deal with the category that decides whether any of this works in practice, and that gets skipped constantly: winter. Almost everyone researching a European retirement does it in the abstract, imagining a general climate rather than a specific January. And the failure mode is remarkably consistent. People move somewhere warm, discover that warm means warm outdoors in summer rather than warm indoors in winter, and spend their first cold season genuinely miserable in a way they did not anticipate. Here is the underlying problem. Southern and even Northern European housing is built to a completely different standard from American housing. Central heating is not universal. Insulation is frequently minimal or absent. Single glazing still exists in older stock. Walls are often solid masonry with no cavity. Buildings are designed to shed summer heat, which is exactly the wrong property in February. So an apartment in Braga, Coimbra, Oviedo, or Trieste in January can be cold indoors even when the outdoor temperature looks mild on paper. And heating an uninsulated apartment with electric heaters, against European electricity prices, is expensive. This is not a marginal cost. For some retirees it is the largest seasonal line in the budget, and it is the single most common complaint from Americans in their first Portuguese or Spanish winter. What to actually do about it? When you view an apartment, ask specifically what heating exists and what it costs to run, and ask the current or previous tenant rather than the landlord. Ask about double glazing. Note which way the windows face, because in the northern hemisphere a south-facing apartment is meaningfully warmer and brighter through winter, and that matters enormously when the days are short. Look for a building that has been renovated rather than one that is merely old and charming. And if you are choosing between two apartments, take the warmer one over the prettier one. You will be inside it for 4 months a year. The mirror image applies to the Mediterranean towns. In Thessaloniki and Kalamata the question is not heating but cooling, and increasingly it is a health question rather than a comfort one. European summers have become materially hotter, heat waves are more frequent and more severe, and older people are the most vulnerable group in every heat mortality study. An apartment with air conditioning, shade, and cross-ventilation is not a luxury in the Greek summer. Budget the electricity for it honestly, and understand that Greek electricity is expensive. There is a related point about the shoulder seasons that nobody mentions. In heavily seasonal towns, a lot of ordinary life shuts down out of season. Restaurants close for 2 or 3 months. Bus frequencies drop. Some medical specialists only visit periodically. The social calendar thins out. In a genuine year-round city like Braga, Coimbra, Oviedo, Ljubljana or Thessaloniki, that simply does not happen, because the economy serves residents. That is a large part of why those cities rank above Kalamata here, and it is worth more than the rent difference. Now let me tell you about 2 towns I wanted to include and cut, because the reasons are instructive. Annecy, France. It is arguably the most beautiful town in this entire category, with a lake, mountains, a pedestrianized old town, and excellent French healthcare. It came off the list purely on cost. Annecy has become extremely expensive, driven by proximity to Geneva and by second home demand, and annual rents there do not fit a modest pension. The French long-stay visitor visa is achievable, but the town is not. Split, Croatia. Excellent for 8 months a year. It came off because of seasonality, which is the exact failure mode this video is designed to catch. Split in July and August is overwhelmed, prices spike, and the old town becomes difficult to move through in a crowd. A place that is unpleasant for 2 months and lovely for 10 is a reasonable trade. A place whose economy is structured around visitors tends to have services that follow the visitors. So the final ranking, Braga 1st, Coimbra 2nd, Ljubljana 3rd, Thessaloniki 4th, Oviedo 5th, Trieste 6th, Kalamata 7th. But notice the pattern that runs through all 7, because it is the actual finding of this video. The towns that are cheapest to live in Greece, are behind the highest visa wall in Europe. The towns with the best infrastructure, in Spain and Italy, sit behind high income thresholds too. The only places on this list where the cost of living and the price of admission are both low are the Portuguese ones. That is why Braga and Coimbra take the top 2 positions, and it is not really about the towns being better. It is about Portugal being the only country in Western Europe that currently lets a retiree of ordinary means in the door. 2 pieces of practical advice before I let you go. First, visit in the worst month. Not in spring. Go in January or February to the northern towns, and in August to the Mediterranean ones. Walk to the supermarket. Take the bus to the hospital and time it. Find out what closes for the season. Every one of these towns is delightful in May, and May is not what you are buying. Second, rent for a year before you commit to anything, and rent in the flat part of town rather than the pretty part. You can always move up the hill later if your knees turn out to be fine. It is considerably harder to move down it. If this was useful, subscribing genuinely helps. Now tell me in the comments, would you rather have a smaller town with a thinner social scene and cheaper rent, or a mid-sized city with more going on and higher costs? Because that is the real choice underneath this entire list, and I do not think there is a right answer. Educational information only. Not financial, medical, legal or immigration advice. Rents, transport services and immigration rules change. Verify current official sources before making any decision. But a walkable town in Europe is only one version of this. Watch our 8-city global breakdown next, it is on your screen now.